Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, May 2nd, and I remember that because tomorrow is my birthday. If you haven't joined us before, I'm a sales coach and trainer, and I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them do one thing and one thing only: increase their sales. And if you have joined us before, you know that every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, I either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And even though he and I are both struggling a little bit with allergies today, I promise you, I brought you another great guest. Before I introduce our guest, I'm actually going to probably talk to him a little bit about this. I want to remind you of something that I've been reminding people of for the last 2 or 3 weeks on our show. And that is, don't pay any attention to the chaos that's swirling around all of us right now, economically, politically. There's a lot going on in the world, and you can either get involved in it and go crazy from it, or you can do what I think all sales people should be doing: prospect your rear end off and go find people who need what you've got. Donald Trump and every other politician in the world doesn't care about you. They care about themselves, and you need to take care of yourself and your family. So stay focused, my friends. Put the blinders on like racehorses do, and stay focused on prospecting and selling, and have a great mindset. And with that, today's guest is a sales veteran with lots and lots of experience. And he says, I'm going to ask him about this, by the way. He says you don't actually need many leads, which is shocking to me. He was committed to changing sales from sleazy to systematic, and I love that. I'm all about let's elevate the profession of sales, which is the whole purpose of the Sales Pro Network. He is the founder of the London School of Sales. Please welcome today's guest, Vinit Shah. Good morning, Vinit.
Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for having me, and great to be here. Thank you.
I'm very excited to speak with you, Vinit. Vinit and I both have a person in common. The same person that trained me in how to be a sales coach and trainer also worked with Vinit. We both have the ultimate respect for our friend Steve Bookbinder, probably the world's greatest sales trainer and sales expert. But we try our best, right, Vinit?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Vinit, before I get to the 1,000,001 questions I have for you, could you maybe give us the 2 to 3 minute version of your background? What brought you up to this point?
Sure. So look, I'm a career sales guy, nearly 30 years in sales, family business, working through university, working in a call center. So inside sales, telesales, supporting clients in client service, customer service, working in manufacturing sales, then working service side. So I've sold physical products, I've sold intangible services. And I worked my way up the corporate ladder. I've done every role in sales. I understand the mindset of a salesperson. And after having spent nearly kind of 18 years working for other people, I just got bored. I just wasn't fulfilled. And my passion has always been to build a business. And at the grand age of 40, I decided that, look, it's now or never. So 8 years ago, I took the plunge and left corporate life. Didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I wanted to try and figure out a way of going alone and building a business. I started a small sales consultancy, and I went into businesses to help them solve sales problems: people, process, policy, technology, anything to do with sales. And that journey led me to founding London School of Sales. And London School of Sales exists to change the perception of sales from, as you said, sleazy to systematic. And it is all about actually what can we do to level up our profession, because I think that our profession is amazing. I think the work that we do is amazing. And like every industry, there are some bad eggs that give it a bad name. But to the most part, most salespeople want to do the right thing. They want to do it in the right way. And that's ultimately what I'm here to help them do. So.
Got it. That's great. And for those of you who are either watching or listening, by the way, if you're with us live, if you have any questions for our guest, Vinit, please put them in the chat, and I will absolutely pass them along. And for those of you who are listening, you may have picked up an accent. When he says London School of Sales, he's not talking about London, Connecticut. You're actually in London, England. Yes?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what you talked a little bit about why did you create the London School of Sales?
So it's an interesting journey. In my experience of consulting, what I found was that even though I wanted to actually approach the challenges from a consulting perspective, every small business person I spoke to said, we have problems with training, we have problems with our team. And actually, it just became a barrier. So I founded the London School of Sales to actually create good quality sales training that was available on demand. The typical sales training that we are used to historically has been 1 or 2 day classroom sessions. where we go there, we sit in a classroom, a sales trainer like Steve Bookbinder, like yourself, comes in, and actually we're immersed for those 2 days. The challenge with that system is that it's a big tick for the company. It's a big tick for the manager. We've delivered training, but it's probably not always the best thing for the salesperson, because the amount of information that they're able to retain from those 2 days is very, very limited. So I said, all right, so there must be a better way for us to do this. So I founded London School of Sales. Funnily, founded in 2019. We launched a week before the pandemic hit. So 13th of March 2020 is when we pressed the button, we went live, and a week later we went into lockdown. But it's essentially the essence was all about what can we do to help salespeople internalize these topics at their own pace and have access to a database of resources whenever they want to just upskill or to refresh their understanding of sales topics.
So, and you've got both online programs that people can access as well as doing live training, right?
Yeah, so now we do a combination of things. We have online programs, we have 52 e-learning courses, detailed, and all of them are actionable. But in addition to that, we supplement that with some face-to-face. But I generally tend to position the face-to-face. Actually, what is the purpose of the face-to-face? Is it, are you kickstarting a transformation? Are you actually wanting to share lots of concepts and ideas in terms of the direction that the company wants to go in? That's a great way to use those 1 or 2 day sessions. But if it's just to solely focus on training, actually it's not going to work, especially if there's no process afterwards to embed and to reinforce. And you know, I push my clients. I ask those questions, because if they don't have that process, then I actually just say to them, look, what's the ROI for this? Because it's great work for me. I come in, I do 2 days, I leave, and guess what? At the end of the day, the team, are they going to move forward? You probably aren't going to get the results that you want. So if you really want to work, let's focus on building a plan that's going to be right for you and your team as well.
Yes, I could not agree more. I'm 100% integrity, with no matter who I'm dealing with, but especially when I'm dealing with prospects. I come out and tell them, look, I'm terrific at training. It's very hard to find somebody better, although I know a few, but I'm really good at what I do. But if you just pay me to come in and train your team, all you're doing is paying my mortgage. You're not going to get anything out of it. They're going to be excited. I'm very entertaining, and I'm going to give them a lot of information, but it's not going to do what you want it to do, which is increase sales. The only way to do that is the training plus substantial reinforcement, because as you said, Vinit, there's way too much to learn in 1 day or 2 days, no matter how good you, me, or Steve Bookbinder are at training. And speaking of a small world, Dr. Rich Atkins says you and he met during lockdown virtually.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, is it a small world. All right. And I hope my friend Rich is okay, because he told me the other day that he was exposed to somebody with COVID. Hang in there, Rich. At London School of Sales, you believe in what's called ethical sales. I think I know what you're talking about, but how do you define ethical sales, and why is that important?
Yeah, I think the world of sales has been portrayed to be negative. We have films like The Wolf of Wall Street, and Wall Street itself as a film where actually salespeople are just portrayed to be sleazy, to be negative. And actually, I want to challenge that notion. You know, it is ethical, because if your intent is right, that's all that matters. You just alluded to it earlier. If you meet a prospect and actually the way that they look at what they want versus how you actually think they should approach it, it's good to talk about that, because sometimes clients don't know what they want. In fact, I think that most prospects I speak to have an idea of what they want, but they don't necessarily appreciate what that actually leads to. I'll give you a great example. I had this yesterday. A client came to me and said, look, we just want to do generic manager training for all of our managers. Doesn't matter, regardless of department, finance, HR, sales. Can you do that? I said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that, but that's not our specialism. Now, I can easily just take the money, but that's just going to put us in a bad light. And actually, ethical sales for me is about integrity. It's about what you think, what you say, and what you do all being aligned. And ultimately, I think that it's our responsibility to make sure that the next generation of those sales leaders, we train them in the right way, because if we do that, then guess what? The next generation of salespeople are going to think about sales in the right way as well. They're not going to see it as this sleazy industry that's like people are just pushing to get the sale. This is really about actually giving people that opportunity, the skill. Because I think the essence of sales for me is about solving problems. And if I can't solve a problem, but I know someone else who can, then, I'm happy to actually make that introduction, because it's about intent. It's about doing the right thing for your clients, for your prospects.
Yeah, it's about serving them. I'm with you 1,000,000%. What are some of the biggest challenges or trends you're seeing right now when you're talking to salespeople and business leaders?
There are a lot. So two or three big ones that I think I'm hearing all the time is there are lots of organizations, companies that are still trying to use what they were doing 5, 6, 7 years ago today. Sadly, those playbooks or those ways of working are not going to get you the results that you might have got 5, 6, 7 years ago. The world has changed, people have changed, behaviors have changed. And I think that you have to adapt, and you have to actually adapt extremely quickly. Because if you don't, you're not only kind of putting your business at risk, you're putting the people inside your business at risk as well, because they're going to get frustrated. They don't want to work in those old ways. They're going to get frustrated in terms of the conversations that they're having. So that for me is one big trend that I'm seeing. And I'm having conversations almost weekly with organizations that actually want to do a diagnostic, because they don't know where the misalignment is in their sales structure. Second trend, and this is an incredible statistic which I keep collecting and reviewing and reflecting on, but nearly 70% of businesses that I'm talking to don't have a sales process. Now, I know that sounds, to me, it sounds absolutely shocking. Or what they do is they say that, yeah, we've got our sales process in our CRM. That's not having a sales process. That's a series of stages that you move an opportunity through, but they don't necessarily understand the essence of what a sales process is, and how and why you need it. So that's another big trend. And the third thing is, I don't think that people actually realize how much buyers have evolved and changed in the last kind of 5, 6, 7 years. I'll share two statistics with you. It's 2/3 of buyers are actually doing their research before they engage a salesperson. So which means that actually the role of the salesperson has evolved. You can't actually, when you have that first conversation with the client, you can't treat that conversation in the same way that you were treating it 5, 6 years ago. It is now a completely different process. So I think that's something that you really need to pay attention to. And the second one is, several years ago, there was a piece about loyalty. Generally speaking, if you sold into a client, a customer, that customer would actually stay with you. And that customer would give you repeat business on a probably more prolonged basis. Now, that trend is now reversing. And it's reversing because change is now a lot easier for companies to manage. So the new age companies are actually proactively creating change mechanisms to make it easy to move from one provider to another. So if you wanted to move your CRM from Salesforce to HubSpot, as an example, HubSpot make it really easy to do that. And what this is doing is driving a completely different set of behaviors from companies that actually want to switch from an incumbent supplier to another supplier. So that loyalty percentage is actually dropping. And that, I think, companies are starting to now understand that if they don't change, then guess what? Clients aren't afraid to move anymore. They're happy to move, because they know ultimately the longer game, they've got to do it in their best interest.
And the competition's out there beating down their door every day to take the business away from us. When you say things have changed, and of course they have, and that we have to change the way we're selling, are you talking about the way we prospect, the actual sales process itself, both?
Yeah, okay. So firstly, I think there's a tendency to think that this is our sales process, this is how we're going to manage the sale. And actually, I think we need to reframe that. We need to guide the buyer through the process. That's how our role has changed. And when we first engage with them, we need to actually understand where they are in that process, because the quality of the research that they've done is ultimately going to determine their perception of us, how they view our capability, and the direction that they want to take that conversation in. So it is our responsibility as salespeople to really truly understand what research they've done and what conclusions they've come to and what basis they're making that decision on. What I'm also seeing is that actually the research that's being done now, we really need to understand where are they in their process, because too often they're still in research mode, but they're engaging with us but we think it's a sales conversation, or salespeople think it's actually an active sales conversation. So we need to actually qualify: are they actually in research mode, or have they done the research and now are they in engagement mode to actually understand more and move that process forward? So too often for me, salespeople don't know what that compelling reason to act is. And when they don't know that compelling reason to act, it becomes really difficult to create that momentum for the sales process.
And isn't it really because they're just not asking the right questions?
Yeah.
They're doing old school, which is pitch, pitch, pitch. Let me tell you why why the London School of Sales is the best company in the world. Not that you would say that, of course, but I mean,
exactly. Nail on the head, right? It's old playbooks. It's ask these, and question fatigue is real. We'll ask all of these questions. We'll get all of this information, and then we'll get a next step, and then we'll do this and we'll do this. And actually, unfortunately, that just isn't the way that things work. What I've seen is that sales are becoming complex. The bigger the business you're selling to, the more complex the sale is, the more people that you're going to have to engage. And generally speaking, whenever you have to engage multiple buyers in the process, it's going to take longer. Decisions are being made by committee. I think the last research by Gartner CB 2019 said that there was 10.2 people involved in an enterprise sale. Right now, that number is only getting bigger, and there's lots of reasons for that. But it just tells you that it's going to take longer. It's going to be more complex, which means that you need to adapt your processes and how you're going to cope with selling into those types of organizations.
Sales, look, I always say sales is not an easy gig. I often say it beats digging ditches in the hot sun, which I wouldn't know because I've never dug ditches in the hot sun, but it's not an easy gig. In your opinion, what's the most difficult role in sales?
So look, there's two. And there's two for two very different reasons, depending on the type of organization you're working in. I think prospecting is really, really difficult. And actually, research of salespeople, 42% of salespeople think that prospecting is really, really hard. But it's only hard, I believe, in organizations where infrastructure hasn't been set up. And actually, the tendency is where you're asking salespeople to just go and fish cold. That's what makes it difficult, because more often than not, the profile of that type of person that can do that can really go and find those opportunities is really rare. And generally speaking, most salespeople, most personalities are not suited to that work. So they might try it, they might have a really bad experience, and that's why they don't succeed at that initial kind of hunting phase. So that's one thing that I think is really, really hard. But for me, the hardest role in sales is sales management. I'm going to use pardon my expression, but I sometimes refer to it as the shit sandwich. It's the pressure cooker. Yes. You have this pressure from above. That pressure from above, are you going to hit target? When are you going to hit target? How are you going to hit target? Are you going to hit target? You've just got that. You've got pressure from below, from your team. I need support with this. I need help with this. What do I do here? What do I do here? You've got other departments vying for your time. You need to get to your team to do this. Oh, they need to chase this PO. They need to do this. And then you've got clients and suppliers that are actually putting pressure on them away. And I see that pressure cooker environment creating that perfect storm for sales managers not to succeed. And really, it's the toughest role, because what a lot of organizations do is they take their best salespeople and they promote them into sales management roles when those people are not sales management quality. They're probably better suited staying where they are as salespeople and not moving into a management role. Yeah. So for me, sales management is the toughest role, because I think that the range of soft and hard skills that you need to quickly adopt and have access to is ultimately what's going to determine whether you're successful or not.
I could not agree more. Sales management is a very challenging role. Excuse me. And I consider it the linchpin of any organization. It's more important than the management above them, more important than the salespeople below them. They are, I like the way you said it, the sandwich that holds it all together. And one of the challenges that so many organizations I've worked with seem to have is they'll take their top salesperson and promote them, which sounds good to the salesperson because it sounds like, oh, I'm going to work less and make more money. No, you're not. You're going to work harder and make less money, at least than your top producers. And you've got all these new hassles, and they never get trained to manage salespeople, which is truly an art. So it's very, very challenging. I want to come back to the other thing that you felt was hard, though, because I agree completely. Prospecting. It's look, as good as you are at sales, as good as I am at sales, as good as together, and let's include Steve, none of the three of us can close enough business unless we're speaking to enough prospects. There's no magic there. Some people are better at selling than others, but if you're not speaking to enough prospects, you're just not going to close enough business. So what do you suggest for companies that are struggling with that? What is working today in prospecting?
So I think gone are the days of like, if you imagine the sales funnel, that historically sales funnel was all about get marketing to go into the universe of our ideal customer and go and find as many of those as possible. And then as soon as someone engages, we'll get someone in sales to follow up with that person. And essentially they become a sales lead. I don't think you can do that anymore. I think attention spans are so short now that marketing have to do a lot more work to warm up and to nurture those organizations that might be your ideal customer. So for me, that's a lot. You mentioned it earlier, but that's the reason why I think less is more. I think you have to do a lot more work up front to really, truly understand who your ideal customer is. And what I mean by this is you need to understand their firmographics, their demographics, and then their psychographics. The firmographics, i.e. in terms of the type of organization. Now, it's easy to say, you want to sell to, or you want to work with SaaS companies. I mean, there's a range of SaaS companies. What's their size? What industry sectors do they support or not support, as the case may be? The more that you can define these things out and narrow that field of vision for your team, I think that's where, one, you get quicker results. Because rather than actually focusing on everything in SaaS, you're just focusing on a niche segment that you can be very honed in on. Second thing I think is that when I talk about demographics and you have different types of buyers. Now, you need to actually understand their process and actually how are you going to help them get from where they are to where they want to be.
It's more about their buying process than our sales process.
Exactly, right? And generally, who's going to be involved? Because in most of the sales that I've been involved in recently, even though I'm trying to target 2 million to 20 million kind of pound companies, I'm seeing at least 3 or 4 people involved in that process. There is always an economic decision maker. There's always a user involved, someone that is actually dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure that this is going to add value at that level. There is generally a technical decision maker. And what I mean by this technical decision maker, it could be IT. Because if you're selling technology, well, guess what? They want to make sure that your software is not going to compromise any of their systems. It could be that. There could be a technical procurement person that actually wants to review your terms and conditions and make sure there's alignment there. And there's other influencer stakeholders as well, because if a company is going to spend some money, then guess what? If they're going to spend it with you, it probably means that they're not going to do something else. So you need to have an understanding of your field of play. So I think that those elements are really, really important now, and understanding those holistic elements will help prospecting teams a lot more.
Yeah, and I think if I'm hearing you right, you're saying we've got to do a lot more warm up before we actually reach out to the prospect. That the numbers for the results of cold prospecting are abysmally low, even with people who are expert at it. I'm still a fan of using cold calls and emails and LinkedIn outreach and all that stuff, but it's got to be part of an overall plan. And you're not look. I've been doing this a long time, 50 years. You used to be able to get through to people. There was no voicemail. There was maybe a gatekeeper, but you could get people on the phone and set appointments that way all day long. It's much harder to do these days. And I think there's got to be a blended approach. What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence? Because you hear about it 18 million times a day. We've been hearing about it really extensively for about a year now. What are your thoughts about AI generally, and more specifically in sales? Is it helpful or is it a hindrance?
Yeah, look, I'm a fan of AI. I'm a fan of technology because I think anything that can help us do some of the heavy lifting, to kind of make us make sense of all the noise, be more specific, be more targeted, I think it's a good thing. The challenge where we are right now is that every day we're hearing of these new technologies or new tools that people think are going to change their world in sales. And actually, they're all hacks. And I say that in inverted commas because they're a hack to the prospecting challenge, or they're a hack to trying to get a list of all of your ideal customer profiles and things like that. And I don't believe in hacks, because ultimately we're going to have a conversation. If you don't actually invest in having better communication and conversations, you're not going to win. You can have all of the technology in the world. It can do the heavy lifting, but at some point, once it's done that, it's identified the true prospects, the true people that you need to speak to, you're still going to have that conversation. So for me, technology that does the heavy lifting, really, really good. AI is a good thing. We have to embrace it. It's going to make us better. We are at this inception point where everyone is testing, and you've got all of the early adopters that are just throwing out lots and lots of tools because actually they think they're relevant. But I think that a lot of them are too generic. And for me, the AI tools that are going to win are very niche. They're going to be very specific, and they're going to focus on solving very unique challenges. So I think it's a good thing, but I think we're in this period of experimentation. And I think that you have to experiment with it. You have to use it. But I think the essence at the end of the day, we still need to have that conversation, and nothing is going to, people are overwhelmed with technology. So
yeah, it is overwhelming. It's like 1,000 new GPTs come out every day, and it's hard to keep up with which one you should be using. Are there any particular AI tools that you are using and recommending?
So I test ChatGPT, and I think it's important that everyone that starts using it, because actually you start understanding what the power of it is. I mean, I'm still speaking to people that haven't actually used ChatGPT, which I find incredible. But I think we're still in the minority, the people that are using. I know that there's had like 500 million active users each month and stuff like that, but a lot of people I'm speaking to still aren't engaging with it. And I think that the more people that start interacting with it on a social level, that will naturally only mean that people start interacting with it on a business level. The challenge, I think a lot of the time, is that people are asking the wrong questions. So to your point earlier, if you ask the wrong question of a customer, you get an indifferent response. Here, the prompts that they're putting in and what they're asking ChatGPT to do isn't necessarily always great, which means that the response that they get, or the output that they get, isn't good either. Yeah. So that there is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of actually understanding what a good prompt or what a good question looks like.
Yes, we need to become good prompt engineers. I've taken kind of a deep dive in the last maybe 6 or 8 weeks into AI, and that's exactly what I found out. Like you've heard, garbage in, garbage out. Well, the more specific you are in giving your instructions to ChatGPT or whatever one you're using, the better the results are going to be. And speaking of that, there's a lot of a conversation, especially in upper management, about remote working versus being in the office. Do you have any feelings about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, when I was a manager and a leader, I wanted my team in the office. And the simple reason is actually salespeople are just wired differently. I think we breed off each other's energy. If you're a young graduate, or you recently graduated and you think it's really cool that you're working from home, it's not doing you any good. Get into the office, get around other salespeople, listen to their conversations, be in that environment, because that will only make you better, in my personal opinion. And I don't think that's just on sales. I think if you are anyone who's recently graduated should be in the office. They need to be around more experienced people. You need to have more conversations, more of those water cooler conversations where you get so many aha moments. I think for salespeople specifically, being in the office, absolutely wonderful. I used to love it. I used to love that energy, that buzz of being around my team. And also, people go to a meeting, they come back into the office. How did it go? They're sharing openly, and everyone's learning in that environment. You can have so many more in the moment coaching interventions with your team. Now, where you have this remote element, okay, a lot of it's to do with cost because companies want to save money and things like that. I think that's lost. And I think that the sales teams, salespeople are suffering as a consequence of that as well.
Yeah. It's funny, I love working remotely. I love my house and I love where I live and I love having to travel. But, at one point I was the co-national sales director for a company called Frost and Sullivan. And I was working out of our New York office, and I had built up a team of 45 inside salespeople. And I still remember the buzz that used to be in the room. Everybody had there weren't offices, it was cubicles. But, you walk into a room where 45 salespeople are on the phone, or not all at the same time necessarily, but, you got 20, 30 people all having conversations. There's a feel, there's an electricity in the air, especially, and this is where I'm old school. I'm a big fan of celebrating all wins. And I'm so old school. Well, I don't do this anymore because most of what I do is remote. But, when I was working in the same room as my sales team, I used to hang a ship's bell, a bell that you would have on a ship, with the rope hanging down. And anytime somebody would get an appointment, you got to go over, ring the bell. Anytime somebody closes a sale, you go ring the bell. And I don't care what else you're doing. You stand up and you applaud. Even if you're on the phone with a prospect right now, you stand up and applaud everybody else. And I can't tell you how many times a day that would happen. And I'd be on the phone with somebody go, what's all the applause about? Oh, one of our salespeople just helped somebody else get this report that you and I are talking about. There's that energy that you're right. We feed off each other. And when you're home alone, it takes a very special type of personality. And it's rare that you can sit at home all day, all by yourself, stay focused, stay doing the job. Because if your manager's not there with you, it is difficult.
And look, I just add something to that. I mean, I look at it from my own experience. I used to love going into London every day. That 45-minute, 1 hour journey was my opportunity to plan my day. And that return journey home was to process everything that happened. And then before I get home, I leave all of that stuff. So now, if you're working from home all the time, guess what? When do you process? Generally speaking, it's just Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. When do you actually fit in the time to do the follow-up and actually give certain opportunities the due care and attention that they deserve? So there's a host of reasons why, but I just think salespeople need to be in the office where possible. I'm not saying for all the time and every single role, but I think it's really, really important, especially for that camaraderie, the energy, really, really powerful.
Yeah, truthfully, I don't want salespeople in the office. I want them out meeting with prospects. I never want to see them in the office. Go meet with some prospects. One of the courses you offer is called the Sales Mindset and Emotional Intelligence. And over the last, I think, 4 weeks, I've had 2 mindset experts because I think right now it's so crucial to have a good mindset when you're selling. Sales is a mental game. Let's face it. Talk a little bit, if you would, about the sales mindset.
Yeah. So look. Psychology is super important in sales, and the sales mindset. So at London School of Sales, through the experiences that I've had, I identified kind of 5 critical mindsets that I wanted salespeople to have. They're basic things, but it's about bringing those things to the forefront, and it's about talking about them in a consistent way. Because the reason for it is because whatever you believe in ultimately drives your behavior, and your behavior drives the results that you get. So you can change that at any moment. But in order to do that, you've got to change what you believe in and how you see certain things. Because without that, nothing else is going to change. Your behavior isn't going to change and the results aren't going to change. So I identified these kind of 5 critical mindsets that I try and get salespeople to just think about and to internalize. So one of the most important ones is this notion of no guessing. All right. No guessing is all about actually us making assumptions. We tend to ask a question, we hear a response, and we've heard some trigger words, and we assume meaning in those trigger words because we've heard them before. And that actually gets us into trouble quite a lot of the time. In a sense, we prescribe before we've actually diagnosed the root cause of the issue. So that's an example. Another
We're doing cookie cutter is what you're saying. instead of really.
Exactly, right? We kind of shortcut the system. Say, I've heard all of that before. Yeah, you need X. And rather than actually doing the due diligence and going through that process, we just try and, as you say, cookie cutter approach. Another one is this notion of value. Actually, the essence of sales for me is about mutual value. And sales, it's like negotiation. It's a win-win. Well, sorry, negotiation is a win-win. Sales is about win-win as well. It's got to be right for them. It's got to be right for us. The worst thing that you can do is bring the wrong type of client on board, because the amount of time, energy, and effort it will take to manage them is ridiculous. So value is so important in this process. And then I said it earlier, integrity matters. What you think, what you say, what you do, right? Make sure it's aligned, because if you don't, people can see through it. I know so many salespeople that actually say something, but they don't believe in it. And you can see through that. So these are the kind of mindsets that I'm really, really passionate about, but they all ultimately lead to, it's about psychology.
I agree. I think sales is almost all psychology. And I'm with you. If you don't have the right mindset, if you don't come from a place of service, if you don't have integrity, find a different job. There's plenty of other jobs out there in the world. You don't have to be in sales. I happen to be a fan of sales because somebody without a college degree can make an unlimited income. But if you don't have the right mindset, you're just not going to do it. If your come from is, I just need to make money, probably not the career for you. I say prospects can smell commission breath like dogs can smell fear. And look, I want money just as much as the next person does, but I say you truly have to come from, I'm here to serve you, Mr. or Ms. Prospect. I'm here to help you if I possibly can. And if I can't, I'll let you know that too. And I think that's the integrity you're speaking of. It's doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And I'll just add one other thing to that. So more recently, I've started, like, I love learning. So I'm all about continuous learning. And I constantly am looking at all of these topics and say, I'm trying to think about my audience and saying, how can I articulate this in a way that is going to really resonate with them? And that's why I kind of moved a little bit to psychology, because I started talking about ego. Now, your ego is your organ for justification. And what it does is that it's constantly trying to keep you in your comfort zone. So you can have an over-indexed ego or an overinflated or underinflated ego. But your ego is constantly wanting you to just stay in your comfort zone. And every time you step out of your comfort zone, where you're uncomfortable, when your fear zone and then your growth zone and your learning zone, it's trying to pull you back in. It's trying to say, oh, this is all different, it's new, and it's trying to bring you back in. So it's trying to get people, salespeople especially when you're introducing new concepts, it's trying to get them to say, look, this is psychologically, this is what's going on. And by the way, the same thing is taking place in your ideal customers and the buyers as well. So how are you going to help them, educate them to move out of that zone?
Great. Another one of your programs focuses on the sales process and prospecting. It's called Optimizing Pipeline and Closing Success. Given the person that we both know so well, I'm a big fan of optimizing pipeline and closing deals. For those who might be fairly new to sales who are listening, what do you mean when you say sales pipeline? Let's define that. And how do we optimize our pipeline?
Okay, so imagine a sales funnel. A sales funnel, it's shaped like that. Now, if I was to actually put that sales funnel on its side, where the larger portion is on the left-hand side, and then the smaller portion is on the right-hand side, that's what your ideal pipeline should look like. And the pipeline essentially is a representation of where all of your opportunities are at any given point in time.
Good definition.
So the way that shape is of the funnel is what your ideal pipeline should look like. Now, as consultants, as coaches, when we go to organizations and we ask individuals to show us their pipeline, what we often find is that there's lots of opportunities maybe in the middle, very few opportunities at the beginning, and there's very few opportunities at the end. So that's what we don't want to see. And how you optimize your pipeline is by making sure that there is sufficient quantity of the right kinds of opportunities at each stage of that pipeline process or your sales process. So ideally, let's just say that you've got a 4-stage sales process. You want to have at least 100 opportunities in the first stage, 50, 60, 70 in the second stage, maybe 30, 40 in the third stage, and then maybe 10 of those will close. So that gives you kind of a 1 in 10 close rate. It's that calculation as well. When you're optimizing it, you understand your conversion rate. You understand from the 100 that come in, how many you're going to get out, but also what converts from stage to stage as well. And the more rigor you have around that, the more you are able to actually understand exactly what's going on in your pipeline, in your sales process, when you're losing clients, and what you might need to tweak and do differently to actually improve your conversion rate.
Yeah, I'm with you. I find so many times that salespeople have that all stuff is stuck in the middle. And the problem is, if you don't have enough in the beginning of your pipeline, somewhere down the line, you can't close enough business. And if it's all at the end, well, first of all, salespeople are eternal optimists. They think everything's going to close.
Yes.
And that's part of the art of sales management, helping salespeople see clearly what's real and what's not. Which is part of pipeline management, making sure that they're not chasing deals that are never going to close, or people who aren't responding. I mean, I don't waste a lot of time with people who don't return my calls or don't return my emails. They're sending me a message, which I do want to hear, which most salespeople don't, which is, I'm not interested, at least not right now. A no doesn't mean no forever, but if somebody's not interested in working with me right now, they're not returning my calls, they're not returning my emails, which of course I avoid by always getting a next meeting. But if they're not, they're sending you a message, and salespeople tend to not want to hear that message. Well, they're not telling me no, so I guess they're still interested. Yeah, that's just not the way it works.
But this is where mindset, I think, is really important. Did you make no an option from the start of the process? Because more often than not, they don't do that. And when you don't do that, that's when either you're going to get ghosted or you're going to get no response. Or what's happened is that the share of voice on that initial call has been, you've spoken 70%, the prospect's only spoken 30%. And that's another sign that actually that's a problem. So there's lots of reasons for it, but you have to make no an option from the start.
Not only do I think you should make no an option, I think you should make it easy for people to say no. I make it very easy for people to work with me. Very easy to say yes. I make it just as easy to say no. And I'm not there to fight with anybody. I'm not saying that when somebody gives me objection, I don't have a rebuttal for it, but I'm not going to spend days and days and weeks fighting with people. I'm looking for people who raise their hand and are interested, engage in a good conversation with me, and who want to work with me, and who I want to work with also, by the way. I think that's important for salespeople to understand. You don't necessarily want every piece of business. You want business where you're good for them and they're good for you. But I'm listening for the no all the time, and I'm good with no. I often say, Vinit, if yes is my favorite word in sales, no is my second favorite, and it's a very, very close second. Yeah. Everything else, however, sucks. Everything else is horrible. I need to think it over. I need to talk to my partner. I need to take it to the committee. I hate that. I make it challenging to give me, but yes and no, love them both. Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the sales cycle? Sales cycles seem to be getting longer and longer. Like you said, more people involved in the decision-making process. What can we do as salespeople to create and maintain urgency during the sales process? And I find that challenging because they either feel the urgency or not. So what advice do you have to help sellers with creating and maintaining urgency?
So I see several challenges here. One, I think that we sometimes overcomplicate the sale. We try and introduce too many things into the sale when actually we should only be focusing on less is more. It depends what your role is. If you're doing new business sales, then guess what? Actually, your responsibility is to just close whatever is in front of you right now. The bigger you try and make that opportunity, the longer it's going to take, the more variables, should we say, that you're introducing into that process. So sometimes it's just about really actually focusing on one thing rather than trying to focus on the biggest thing. What is the priority and the challenge for that client right now? Let me give you an example. I work with a manufacturing company. They sell machines. And yes, they can actually do lots and lots of different things with their clients. But what I try and get them to do is to say, what is that one thing that prospect needs right now? Is it a new machine? Is it a maintenance contract? Is it something else? Focus on that. Because the more time you spend trying to actually bolt on all of these other services, guess what? Actually, other people are going to have to be involved. The budget level that the person you're speaking to is capped. More people are, you're going to have to talk to other departments and so on and so forth. And it just overcomplicates it. So that's one thing that I'm seeing that I think that can happen straight away that you can actually do to reduce or shorten the sales cycle. The other thing is I see a lot of salespeople not being good at the planning. They're not setting up the sales process or the next meeting for success, right? They're not asking the right questions. They literally, you've got 45 minutes. They've gone through 45 minutes and then they've forgotten to actually talk about the next step. They've forgotten to talk about all of the elements that were on their agenda. And they've forgotten to actually kind of think about the objective. Sometimes they actually don't set the meeting up for success. You know, did you send the agenda in advance? Did you actually talk about what the objective of that meeting was and what the person that you, or the people that are in that room, what is the end goal of that meeting? Because we have lots of lovely discussions and we talk about lots and lots of things, but actually, did we achieve the end goal of the meeting? So I think what happens is what sometimes can be shorter gets naturally extended because we haven't done all the right things.
Yeah. And one of the biggest, and you mentioned it a couple of times in your statements, one of the biggest mistakes salespeople make is not ending a meeting by getting that next meeting. I call it be nasty, BNASTY. Always get a best next action step toward yes every single time. When you leave a prospect and you haven't set up the next meeting, one, you don't know if they're really interested or not, and two, you're extending your own sales process, even if they're interested. If you haven't set up that next meeting, you now have to reach out to them when it's time for the next meeting, whether you're calling or emailing or whatever. Most likely, I don't know about you these days, but most likely you're going to play phone tag with people for a while. So if you just end every meeting by setting up the next meeting, you do two things. One, if somebody gives you some of their valuable time and then agrees to give you more of their valuable time, you know they're interested. Nobody meets with guys like you and me just because they want to have a chat with a salesperson. They're interested if they've already met with you and agree to meet with you again. So A, you know you're working with an interested prospect and not wasting your time. B, you're shortening your sales process. So instead of chasing you with voicemails and emails and stuff like that, which could take weeks, even longer to get that next meeting, you've got it set. I can meet with you today. We can go over everything. I know before I'm done talking to you whether I've got something for you or not. Let's set that next meeting. What's today? Friday? Let's set that next meeting for next Wednesday where we continue the conversation. And when they do what you're doing, nod their head and they say, yes, you know, you've got somebody that's worth investing the time to put together a proposal and go meet with them again. So many times I see salespeople chase every prospect equally. All prospects are not equal. All deals are not equal. And the quicker you have a system, a pipeline management system that helps you see that, the more successful you're going to be. I find that many salespeople do really, really well, sometimes good or even great at presenting, but they often fall apart at two main points in the sales process. The first one is when it comes to time to tell them their price, discussing money. I find salespeople often do a great job up until that point, but they get very nervous when it comes, well, here's how much we charge and whatever words they're going to say that with. So that's the first one that I find is a stumbling block. And the other one is actually handling objections. What are your suggestions for how do you handle the price discussion?
So okay, price. One, you mentioned it there. I don't refer to it as price; it's investment.
Every time, of course.
Right, and of course, it is. If you have set the meeting up in the right way, this is your solution for your challenge. And I think, generally speaking, with price, you have a price conversation at 2 points. One, you have it at early stage when you are in that discovery phase and you're setting everything up. Because you want to make sure that actually you're talking to the right prospect that has the requisite budget range and can afford your services. So that's first thing. You've got to set that up, because if you don't qualify that earlier, it only becomes an issue later on. So qualify
and you
that
can waste
up
a lot of time.
Exactly, right? So qualify that up front. Our services, company like yours, typically will pay between $50,000 and $100,000. That's it. Qualify that. If the client says, "Oh, actually, no, you know what? We weren't expecting that." Well, okay, what were you expecting? Maybe we've misinterpreted the brief. Let's review that. And
Hang on, I got to tell you, you're 100% on the money. I never ever leave a first meeting without saying, I'm going to have to go back and put pencil to paper and really, take a look at all the numbers. But based on my experience, my gut says you're looking at something in the range of, 45, 50,000. Is that about what you had in mind? And if they say no, my answer, and Steve actually taught me this, goes, "Oh, too low." And they always go, no, too high. How much too high? Well, I was thinking 10,000. Well, if I know that I'm going to come back with a proposal for 45 or 50,000 and they want to spend 10,000, I'm not wasting my time. Maybe
Exactly.
there's something I can do for 10,000, but it's certainly not going to be what I would do for 45 or 50. So I always have that at the end of a first meeting, because one of the things that salespeople I find often do is they waste their own time, and I have no time to waste. I don't want to waste my prospects' time, but I really don't want to waste more time. You could love me and want to work with me desperately. I love that Lamborghini, but I only have 10,000 to spend. Sorry, you can't get a Lamborghini for 10 grand. So I'm with you 1,000,000% there.
And the second time, the next second time you talk about price is negotiation. I wouldn't necessarily be talking about price when I'm presenting, simply because actually it's the solution, right? So actually it's the wrong time to talk about the investment value, because actually now that when you're presenting the solution, it's about, right, we've been through the process, we understand your challenges. Here is the solution that we propose for your challenges. Is it in line with your expectations? And then we move on. Now, the other thing you spoke about was objections. Look, I love objections. I see objections as opportunities, and I generally want to shake the person's hand, saying, listen, thank you, because 9 out of 10 times people won't tell you their objections. They'll just ghost you, or they won't say anything. So when people do raise an objection, I'm really thankful that they did, because clearly either I have misinterpreted something or I haven't articulated myself well enough. So they are really giving me a second chance to be able to actually share more information with them. So I see objections as an opportunity. One, so that I can understand whatever it is that might have been misunderstood. And two, I can then relay new information that might be more relevant and pertinent to whatever that objection was.
Yeah, that's great. I want to come back to price just for one second, because one of the things that I think is crucial is when you state your price, and I'm with you 1,000,000%. I never say it's the price. It's always the investment, because psychologically, when we hear the word investment, we think, oh, investments have a return. Price, that's money going out the window. But when it comes time to say your number, whatever you're going to call it, I say one of the things that you have to do is have complete confidence. This is where I see salespeople fall down. They get very nervous because they believe that when they announce the number, that's going to be what closes the sale or not. So they get very, very nervous. You've got to stay up with complete confidence. And for me, it's always, and the investment is just whatever it is. And I don't care how much it is. It's always just, the investment is just 200,000. The investment is just whatever it is. Right. And then, of course, shut up. Stop talking and see what happens. Because so many times, salespeople will say the number, ask, can we move forward, or whatever they're going to do to close sale. And then if the prospect hesitates for more than 3 seconds, they're jumping in with another feature or another benefit, or worse, maybe I can do better on the price. Horrible. Learn to shut up and wait. To me, silence can be your best friend in sales. And so many times I find salespeople don't do that. Unbelievable. Why is it that sometimes answering a bunch of, sometimes we're in a sales process, and of course we should be asking questions, but the prospect asks a lot of questions too. Why do you feel that sometimes when the prospect is asking a bunch of questions and we're answering them, why do you think that's a trap?
It depends. It might be a trap because we haven't actually qualified what stage they are in their process. That's why it's a trap, because ultimately, know what gear you're in. Is a line that I kind of say to myself when I I'm happy when I get an inquiry. Okay, great, but right, so that I can prepare accordingly. What type of conversation are we going to have? And I'm quite open to asking that conversation, that question, because actually, what is it? What is it that you want actually? What is the objective of the meeting? Because if we understand the objective, is it for you to actually obtain information? Is it for us to actually have a sales conversation about some specific challenges that you have? So know what gear you're in. And generally speaking, when the client is asking you more questions, for me, straight away, they're in research mode. They're collecting information still. So these are little triggers that I think that we have to be willing to ask that question. Where are you in your process? We don't do that. A lot of salespeople don't do that. And at what stage, when do you anticipate being in the position to be able to move to whatever it is that you want to go? Those are the leading questions that we need to ask.
Yeah, and when the salesperson is doing all the answering, the prospect is doing all the question asking, the salesperson is answering. Who's controlling the sale?
Exactly. Right.
It's
Whoever's
always,
asking, yeah.
I always ask this question of audiences, who do you think should be controlling the sales process? And the obvious answer is we do. Well, how do we control the sales process? Whoever is asking the questions is controlling the process. And
Totally.
I have zero issues. And I love it when prospects ask me questions. It shows that they're interested. If they had no interest, they wouldn't be asking questions. But I've got to resume control by answering their question and then asking a question of my own, because I know we're in agreement here. It's not about your presentation. It's not about your strong closing skills. It's about your ability to ask great questions, listen actively to the answers, and tell them stories which prove we've been in this situation before, and here's how we've helped others work it out, and here's how we're going to do it for you too. I even hate the word pitch. I don't want to hear the word sales pitch anymore. And I understand it's a term that we use in sales, but to me, the only pitcher should be standing on a baseball mound. Stop pitching. As salespeople, you just really need to be a true consultant. And when you consult, when I do, I know what we do when we go in. We ask a bunch of questions to find out, what are you doing now? What's going on? Because only then can you figure out how I can help you.
It's the confidence, right? It's the audience. It's the confidence that you've been in this situation before. You understand my pain. You're going to use whatever solution to fix it, and you can actually paint a picture of what the outcome might look like. That's it. As long as that confidence is there, that actually you really truly understand me, my problems, and how you can help me fix them. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, my eyes keep darting up to the time clock, and I see we're quickly running out of time. I've only got time for one more question, and I know that the answer to this could probably go on for 15 minutes. Everybody, I don't care how good you are, everybody goes through a sales slump eventually. In 50 years of selling, I've been through more than one. There's no doubt about it. What should we be doing when we get into a sales slump or when we encounter sales setbacks?
As you say, I think they're normal, and I think there's lots and lots and lots of reasons for them. What I've often felt is that actually I've second guessed stuff. I've become lazy. Is generally the reason as to why I've gone into a sales startup. I've actually shortcutted the system. I haven't paid attention to the little details that I need to pay attention to, and essentially. I've been compromising with the way that I think I should be doing stuff because I think that I know it best. And as soon as I kind of get out of my own self and start getting back into doing things with the right level of rigor and detail, everything falls back into place. Rather than second guessing what that word means that the client is or the prospect is saying to me, and I actually say, so help me understand that from your point of view. What does that actually really mean? Once I get that, I collect more information, and then everything naturally flows. And I think that the longer that you're in sales, sometimes it's difficult to keep doing the same thing. So you have to have a refresh. You've got to go away and actually get more perspective. So I think that for me that really helps. But I think sometimes it happens, but it's always going back to the basics and then building back up from there.
Yeah, it's all about the fundamentals. And I was laughing as you were speaking because, obviously I don't close everything. In 50 years, I've lost a lot of deals. And, since I opened up my training company, I can remember a particular situation where I was highly referred into this prospect. He reached out to me, said, so-and-so told me about you and says, you're great. I want to meet with you. Here's what I need. Come on, we're going to do business. And I go in and he had read articles I had written. He was quoting them. And I went in cocky and I walked out and I never got the deal, never got back with them. And when I stopped and thought about it, I realized I was not doing the sales process that I teach others to do, that I've been using myself for almost 50 years. I shortcut my own process. It always boils back to the fundamentals. And I think when we're in a slump, that is great advice. It's time to go back to the fundamentals. And it's also time to reach out to a guy like you, to a guy like me, to your manager if you've got one. Speak to somebody else. It's hard to get yourself out of your own way, but somebody else, an accountability partner, a coach, something like that can often do it. And I hate to say this, but we are out of time. So before we go, I'm going to share my screen. Would you please tell people who are watching and also for those who are going to be listening, because this will get converted to a podcast, how they can reach you if they want to speak to you about possibly working with the London School of Sales?
Yeah, absolutely. Please email me, visit our website. We offer not just training, we do a lot of diagnostics. We help people write playbooks. Ultimately, training is an outcome. we want to fix the root cause of the sales misalignment. That's what we help them do. So you can reach me on email. You can go to our website. You can sign up for free. On the right-hand side, the QR code, you can actually explore our academy for free. There's lots and lots of resources there. And you can use the other QR code on the left-hand side to connect with me on LinkedIn. And of course, follow us on YouTube as well.
Perfect. And for those who are watching live, they can actually see your email address and website. Would you like to, this will get converted to a podcast. They won't be able to see it. Would you like to just give them your email address or anything, other contact information that you'd like them to have?
Sure. So my email is Vinit, VINIT @lsos.co. And the web address for London School of Sales is lsos.co.
Perfect. Vinit Shah, we are out of time. Thank you so much for sharing your brilliance so generously. I truly appreciate it. And I will end as I always do. Gang, please remember, sales is a game of making things happen. Get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Vinit. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jeff.